One of the most enjoyable things to do in the morning was to watch my friend Katla, Gunnar's daughter, walk around our apartment without clothes on. Katla was an aspiring model who had immigrated from her native Iceland to Milan in hopes of success. But Milan is one of the fashion capitals of Europe, second only to Paris, and this beautiful city is full of beautiful girls. Katla had been quite successful on the runway and had placed a couple of print ads, but she had never achieved real success, never became famous or a supermodel. And now, at 45, although still beautiful, she was only working in the fashion industry as an assistant editor for Italian Vogue. She had the same icy blue eyes she'd always had, but her naturally blonde hair had developed streaks of gray. She still wore it long, longer than most women her age, and was still stunning. But even though she had a portfolio, she wasn't getting modeling jobs for mature women. And yet, even barefoot, even naked, she instinctively maintained a model-like gait, placing one foot directly in front of the other in a way that normal people just don't walk. Even in the mirror, slightly fogged up from her shower, I saw her walk into the bathroom, carrying my phone. Paolo, I have a phone connection to the United States at this hour? I thought to myself it was only 7:10 in the morning, which meant it was already 1:10 in the United States. Hello, I answered, switching to English. Hello, Paul. Paul Ginelli? This was unusual. Even my business contacts in the United States called me Paolo. Really, I hadn't been called Paul since I was in high school. Yes, that's him. Who's calling? It's Connie. Connie Guggenheim. Janice Grayson said you were coming to our 30th year reunion. Please, you can't come. Wait, I don't know who you are. And why can't I come to the reunion? Okay, this is Connie Shadler. And if you show your face at the reunion, my marriage is over. Flashback. Saturday, May 13th, 1989. The reunion at the elite SE High School was going very well. SE was the most expensive private school in Lexington, and my father was wealthy. He owned a small but still moderately successful horse farm on Versailles Road near Keeneland. I wasn't quite sure how he made his money, as expenses always seemed high, but he was, or at least seemed to be, well off. And all the horse kids went to SE. The thing was, I was kind of in between girlfriends. Cindy had dumped me a month ago because I was too insistent on trying to get into her pants. But I was like any 18-year-old guy, I wanted intimacy. I didn't pay much attention to Connie Shadler. She wasn't a horse. Her father worked at some bank in downtown Lexington, and I didn't know what her mother did for a living. But she caught my eye at graduation because, for some reason, she got into a rowdy argument with her boyfriend, who was a soccer player at one of the public high schools. I think I saw him at Tate's Creek, catching a glimpse of his back as he was leaving the gym, and that was the last time. Shadler seemed to be on her own now. None of the other guys were paying much attention to her. After 2 dances and another glass of fizzy punch, I figured, why not? She was friendly, and we were both just enjoying the night. She was having fun, laughing, and going along with the energy of the evening. Like most SE kids, she was used to the usual prom night antics. When I asked her to dance, she happily accepted, and from that moment on, we stuck together for the rest of the evening. I didn't have a limo like some guys, but I had my own car, a red 1978 MGB. It wasn't the most expensive car, but it had a classic look that stood out. Around midnight, Connie and I drove down Versailles Road toward my parents' house. Looking back, I probably shouldn't have been driving, but SE kids always knew how to be careful. My parents were fairly easygoing and gave me a lot of independence, but we still made sure to enter the house quietly. Connie seemed impressed by the place, though I knew it wasn't the grandest of the bluegrass horse farms. We spent time together that night, sharing stories about the past and our hopes for the future. Graduation was just a few weeks away, and I thought maybe we'd see each other again. But when I reached out later, she told me she had reconnected with her boyfriend, and whatever we had that night was just a moment in time. At the time, I didn't fully understand the significance of it, but looking back, I realized that high school was full of fleeting moments, some meaningful, some just part of growing up. Sunday, May 19th, 2019. It's been a long time since high school in the US, and I've built a successful career in international finance. My parents, and indeed my entire family, were originally from Italy, and Italian was my first language, not my second. I worked at Borsa Italiana in Piazza Affari, where the ill-fated statue of the middle finger by Maurizio Cattelan stood in front of us. I've never been sure if it means that the 99% are showing us 1%ers the finger or that the 1%ers are cheating poorer people. But whatever it meant, I was earning over €600, 000 a year, a seven-figure salary, seven-figure bonuses, and had a stunning apartment next to the Church of San Maurizio, a magnificent 16th-century church in a building that escaped bombing during World War II. Add to that the €29 million I got when my parents, whose health was declining at the time, sold a horse farm in Kentucky and the ski chalet I bought from Cecil von Schloff near Cortina. Yes, I was happy to be in the 1% even if I wasn't a billionaire. When I received an email from Janice Grayson, our high school class secretary, informing me of a planned 30-year reunion, I decided that I might not be the richest of the class of 1989, but I had to be there, living and working in Italy with a 6-foot-tall model in my arms. Yes, I would make an impression at the festivities. And I always wanted to make an impression. The reunion was set for early August, so I had plenty of time to plan, and I texted Janice that yes, I would be there. I wondered if I would be the farthest away from our classmates. Then Connie called and begged me not to come. According to her, if her husband saw me, her marriage would be over. She wouldn't explain anything, but I needed to know why. Facebook made that easy. She gave me her new last name, and I wondered, how many Connie Guggenheims could there be? None, it turned out. But her age and location. She now lived in Georgetown, Kentucky, just one county away from Lexington, gave me an idea. She worked at PNC Bank in Lexington, and her husband, a guy named Carl Guggenheim, labored at the Toyota plant in Georgetown. The pictures showed a solid middle-class family, not rich, but a solid middle-class family. And there it was, the very proof I needed. The Guggenheims had 4 children, a son and 3 daughters. Looking at the picture of their son, Carl Jr., was like looking at myself 30 years ago. Holy crap, I had a son. Digging around some more, I saw that Carl and Connie were married on July 1st, 1989, and everything fell into place. It was a shotgun wedding because Connie was pregnant, and apparently her husband decided the boy would be his. Yes, it was all coming together. His Facebook page said he graduated from Tate's Creek High School, and there was a picture of him in a soccer uniform. He must be the same guy from prom she got into a fight with. She must have gotten back to being intimate with him almost immediately, and that covered the pregnancy date. He had dark hair and eyes like me, so Carl Jr. could at least be his kid. Not being a straight-A student, if he hadn't noticed me at prom, he wouldn't have had the sense to put 2 and 2 together. Their other 3 kids were girls, and there was no one to compare. The youngest too. One look at me at the reunion, and he would have figured it out. No wonder Connie wouldn't let me attend the reunion. The thing is, this was a huge problem for me. I had never been married, believing that girls were too easy to get into bed without a ring. I was handsome and wealthy enough to have no serious lack of women, and Katla wasn't the first model I dated. After one pregnancy incident at Columbia University, it was a false alarm, and another, a real one when I was 30, in which a girl decided to have an abortion, I made a decision. I didn't want my bachelor days ruined by getting a girl pregnant. So I took up self-medication. After 4 days and 6 months of condom use, I felt free and no longer bothered. It also meant that my family line was over because I was an only child. When I was in my 30s, that didn't matter to me. I lived in New York City, which was full of beautiful women to be intimate with, but also the most aggressive social climbers. I had already started at Lehman Brothers and had just reached the annual bonus level, figuring that with my small 6-figure salary, 6-figure, or maybe even higher bonuses would start next year. Then, the opportunity to move into the London market presented itself, and I took it. New York, then London, and finally, Milan. Places with high pressure, high incomes, and decidedly anti-family careers. It wasn't as bad for men as it was for women. Women who got pregnant in the financial industry were condemned as moms, and their careers stagnated. But men just weren't given time to be fathers to their children. In Manhattan, Having children meant that the only green space they saw was a weekend in Central Park. And in London, for that matter, it was even worse. Milan is smaller, and the reconstruction after the bombings meant more careful urban planning, but it's still not a place where I wanted to raise a child. I didn't have a wife, nor did I really want one. Slept with a few guys she thought would help her modeling career. And it still didn't work out. I liked Katla. Sometimes I even thought I loved her. But in a way, I still thought I was using her. And then I turned 48. I never got married. I never had kids. And I realized that the Janelli line was ending with me. When you're 18, the last thing you worry about is your own mortality. When you're 30, there's still a lot you can do with your life, and who needs a wife and kids to tie you down? I didn't want to live in some Connecticut suburb, doing yard cleanup on weekends. I wanted a townhouse. In Gramercy Park or Central Park West, or maybe an awesome loft in Soho. But now, at 48, I realized I had a son I'd never met. A son who didn't know that Carl Guggenheim Sr. wasn't his real father. And that son had a mother who really didn't want my son to know anything different. Saturday, July 13, 2019, my plane landed at Bluegrass Field Airfield in Lexington. The flight from Milan to JFK Airport lasted a measly 9.5 hours. Despite the fact that I was flying first class and that there was a Wake Forest women's basketball team on the plane to gawk at, Katla wasn't with me. I hadn't warned Connie of my arrival, but I had to face her, had to confront her. If I had informed her beforehand, she would have told me never to come, but I didn't want to give her the opportunity to veto my trip. I had all day to kill because there was no way I'd try to confront her on a Sunday when her husband was probably home. No. I knew she worked at PNC Bank on Main Street in Lexington, so I just showed up there and asked her to have lunch with me. I guess that wasn't the best plan. Connie worked as a loan officer. She had her own glass-walled office, but it was very public. I recognized her as soon as I saw her, but of course, she was who I was looking for. I just sat in the waiting area until her current client left and then walked in. Connie immediately realized who I was. "Oh my God!" she sighed as I walked into her office. Kunia. How are you?" She was flustered, stunned, little else. But after a few seconds, she managed to pull herself together. "Paul, you can't be here." I sat down in the chair across from her desk. "Connie, we need to talk. I know the truth about our son." I made sure to say our son, and not your son. "Paul, you can't just come in here and ruin my life. You have to leave. I have appointments throughout the day." "Then when and where can we meet?" "That's what we need to discuss." I watched the wheels spin as she stared at me in silence. Finally, she picked up the phone, called someone who turned out to be her supervisor, and asked to be excused tomorrow afternoon because of a family problem that had just arisen. "Woodland Park tomorrow, around 12:30. Meet us at the bandstand and bring something to eat. We'll find a park bench where we can talk without eavesdroppers. Now please leave." It didn't sound good, but I realized it was reasonable of her. Woodland Park was public enough that I couldn't force her to do anything. There were too many people, especially since there was a large public pool. But there were places where people could talk in private. I walked through downtown Lexington. There was a lot of construction going on, big buildings, urban renewal. An old college professor of mine liked to encourage students to finish their work sooner by using the bastardized expression, "Tempest is fidgeting." Well, in this case, Tempest was repeating, just creeping up. I had a nice dinner, watched movies in my room, and just stared up at the empty ceiling, trying to sleep. It was 11:50 when I parked my rental car on Woodland Avenue, right in front of the tennis courts in the park. If you looked at the park from Woodland Avenue, the bandstand was on the left, and there were a couple of old park benches next to it. The day was hot, sunny, and the pool was filled with moms with kids and a few female students sunbathing between semesters. Some of them were worthy of attention, but I felt old. Katla was gorgeous but close to my age, and while the female students weren't models, they certainly wouldn't be interested in a man my age. Well, maybe if they knew how much money I had. But now, my age was definitely coming to the forefront because somewhere out there, I had a son who was older than these girls. A son who had been raised not by me, but by another man he considered his father. Even if I had met him, even if Connie had recognized me as his real father, my son was already 29 years old, and I was just a stranger. My phone was showing 12:28 p.m. when I saw Connie approaching. She was wearing khaki shorts, but they weren't Daisy Dukes or anything like that. She was wearing a blue t-shirt with a British pattern that hardly stood out at all, and a pair of rubber sandals. I had a basket of food for us, some chicken salad sandwiches, chips, and bottled water. Instead of a park bench, Connie jumped up on the edge of the bandstand so we'd have somewhere to spread our food. So, she began, "Yes, my son Carl is your son. I didn't know that until he got older and the resemblance to you became obvious. I made up with my boyfriend the day after graduation and finally gave him what he wanted. I let him get intimate. Well, once that line was crossed, we went on, and I realized I was pregnant. Yes, I counted the days and thought there was a chance my baby was yours, but I thought that chance was slim since we had only been together for one night, and Carl and I had been sleeping together for weeks. As soon as I told Carl I was pregnant, he immediately proposed to me, and I think he was already thinking about it. Your faces are completely different, but you have the same skin color, so I wasn't too worried even after Junior was born." "You know, you could have told me," I replied. "Told you what? That I'm pregnant with someone who could be your child? Carl was there for me. He loved me and wanted to be with me. And I heard you were going to apply to some Ivy League school. By the time Junior was born, you'd already gone to New England or something." "Oh, okay. But once you realized he was my son, you could have contacted me. Even if I was away, my parents lived here until 2004, and they could have contacted me even if you didn't know where I was." "So what, Paul? That you have a child? How was I supposed to know if you'd be happy or just brush me off?" And Carl was happy with his kids. By the time I was convinced Junior was your child, we already had 2 daughters. And what was I going to do? Ruin my marriage and our family by finding out Junior wasn't really Carl's son. Carl was proud, very proud, of taking my virginity, and he never knew he wasn't. I never told him otherwise, and I was a damn good wife to him. I built him a nice house, worked at the bank, and never cheated on him. He'll be devastated to find out Junior isn't his. It'll ruin our marriage. And who knows what that will do to Junior and his sisters. Connie, I don't know what to tell you, except that I am very well off, and I have no other children. I have no heirs. And what, you want to wave your money under my nose? What the hell difference does it make if you want to destroy my family? It could make a big difference to our son. My son is doing well. He's an engineer now, married, with children of his own. He's happy, and he has a wonderful wife. What would you do? Give a few $1,000,000 to my son and nothing to my daughters, just emphasizing the difference in their backgrounds. He doesn't need your money, Paul. Connie, secrets like that aren't always kept. Who knows? A situation might arise where someone needs a transplant or genetic testing, and then all will be revealed? I think I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. You have a lot of money. You should find some nice young girl to have a son with. Well, no. I've had a vasectomy, so I'm not having any more children. That's your problem, Paul. Not mine, not Junior's. Write a will. Leave your money to the church or some charitable organization, but don't destroy my family. I gave you my virginity, Paul. Something I really wanted to keep for my husband. Something precious. I don't owe you. I don't owe you anything. And if you reveal this secret, Junior may get some of your precious money, but I'll make sure he hates you until the day he dies. Go away, Paul. Just go away. Leave us alone and never contact me again. Saturday, August 10th, 2019. Tonight is the 1989 reunion, and here I am, walking around the Duomo in the center of Milan. It would be great to see former classmates, but I've been living without them for 30 years. What would I hear if I went? Stories about their families, husbands, wives, and children, where they work, in a country of which I am a citizen but no longer have any real connection to. Connie had no choice but to go. She was a cheerleader and one of the class officers, the treasurer. It might not mean anything, but her husband would probably start asking questions if she refused to attend. And maybe, if people looked at me at the reunion and knew Connie's kids, some might make a connection by our appearance. Who knows? Maybe a few people had already guessed it but hadn't said anything to Connie's husband. After all, why would they? Carl wasn't a classmate of theirs, so they have no particular loyalty to him. So I did the best I could. I went to a lawyer and rewrote my will. Since I have no children to acknowledge, I made a large donation, 20 million euros, to Médecins Sans Frontières and made that charity my main heir. To Katla, I left our apartment and chalet in Cortina, should she survive me, as well as 5 million euros in cash. To my only son, my only child, I left nothing. Nothing but the security of his own family. I spoke to the Archbishop of Milan, Mario Enrico Delpini, about what I was going to do, and he said that yes, it must be hard to give up my son in this way, but that it would be a great sin to destroy Connie's family in America by revealing a secret. The Archbishop prayed with me that the secret would always be kept. May God have mercy on my soul.